Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Not to be too sensational, but to compare and contrast uncertainty around capital market volatility and global interest rates versus the plain brute force of the Carolinas' economic comeback is a study in stark contrast. Welcome again to the longest running and the most widely watched source of Carolina business and public policy. I'm Chris William, and notwithstanding our overt education and transportation policy challenges, it most certainly seems that the underlying business and commercial activity in this region, North and South Carolina, is approaching Goldilocks status. Not too hot, not too cold, but just right. Our job is to tweeze out what is worth knowing on this program, and joining us later, the chairman of the Tar Heel State's Department of Transportation, Ned Curran.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Tim Giuliani, President and CEO of the Greater Raleigh Chamber of Commerce, Torrey Rush, Chairman of the Richland County Council, and special guest Ned Curran, Board Chair of the North Carolina Department of Transportation. And now, here's Chris William.
Hello, welcome to our program. Tim, welcome. Torrey, good to have you both here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Torrey, let's start with you. You're chairman of the Richland County Council in, of course, Columbia and the Midlands. But you're also in the commercial real estate business. And Torrey, I know you've got economic development, fiscal policy, and community development as the most important things. Richland County has not been known to really embrace economic development as many parts of the Palmetto State have. Do you think this is a new day in Columbia?
And thank you, Chris. I do think it's a new day. The reason being, we were late getting to the table. We just started our economic development office several years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, which is late for a county of our size. But I think in that short period of time, we've shown that we've been aggressive as it relates to economic development, trying to attract companies to our state, and trying to address their needs. So I think it is a new day for Richland County, and I'm excited about our future. I think the foundation is good, but I'm excited about our future.
So Mr. Chairman, how do you foster collaboration in a, you've got Richland and Lexington counties, and some say that they couldn't be two different counties stacked right next to each other. So how do you foster collaboration?
It's been tough in some aspects, but good in a lot of aspects. We've made sure between Richland and Lexington County, the chairs meet on a month-to-month basis. Even Kershaw County, another county right here in the Midlands, and we want to make sure that we're conversing. We understand what each other's needs are. We try to get past some of the politics of the old, which can be difficult, but we try to get to a solid foundation. And I think we're getting there. And just talking to the chairman, Mr. Jeffcoat of Lexington County, just last week, and the next step is how do we do a project together? It's one thing to have conversations, but how do we do a project together? And I think that's going to be next for us, whether it's an industrial park together, or whether it's additional transportation, where we're trying to ramp up the transportation in the Midlands. So I'm excited about the collaboration between Lexington and Richland County. It's definitely a lot better than it was.
Do you get a sense of, and I promise I'm not going to keep drilling you on this because I know we've got many more things to talk about. But Torrey, do you get a sense that this is not a false start, that this is an actual move forward and there's a lot of mojo?
I do. I think you've got a lot of different political individuals at the table now that feel that it's in the best interest to have collaboration, and that's what it's all about. If we can't grow together in the Midlands and grow together in an efficient manner, then we're all going to lose. Yeah. And so it's important that we work together and use our common knowledge and our common resources to make sure we create a better Midlands for everybody.
So, Tim, on this issue of collaboration, by the way, welcome to the Tar Heel State. I know you're coming from Florida, and you're coming into a market that's a different part of the life cycle, as Torrey just described it. You've got Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. The Triangle has been together on so many issues for so long, but now Durham, Raleigh, Chapel Hill are separate entities and become even more separated. So you've got the state capital, you've got all of these competing now developments. How do you foster collaboration at the Raleigh Chamber?
Well, I can tell, being new to the area, it's the collaboration that's got us to the point that we're at today. And I've seen other places in the country that are trying to figure out how you do this. So collaboration has been so central that I know to meet the challenges of the future, we've got to keep that as central to the strategy for the Triangle. And there's issues like transportation, moving into transit, that has to work regionally. So there are plenty of issues for us to continue to work together.
When you've got Bob Giolis and Bob Ingram, who are now heading up whatever the new plan is going to be in RTP and specifically at the park,
right.
$2 billion plus development coming forward, how does that factor in, and what's Raleigh's role in where this new direction is going to be for RTP?
Well, I think the main thing is that we continue to compete globally as a region, and there are assets all over the Triangle that's made it effective, and you can use the best of what's going on in the park or what's going on in Durham or Raleigh, and making sure that that's all connected. So we're very focused on transit, on making sure that we're preparing our growth for the future. And it's these springs that come every spring, that's the new students graduating from the universities that continue to feed this economy. So we got to remain focused on what's made the region successful and how it's been successful, and that's why we continue to work so closely together.
So you use the T word, transportation and infrastructure. Yeah. Torrey, seems, as we were talking about, seems like a new day in the Midlands in South Carolina. Yeah. So Speaker Lucas in the House of Representatives of South Carolina had pledged to really move transportation forward. Many said that did not happen in this session. How critical is this, and what is your role? So what happens to transportation, and how does it not knock the legs out from underneath some of the momentum that Columbia has?
Well, the first step that we took was the penny sales tax, which we passed back in 2012, and we're implementing now. I think that from a local standpoint, we took the steps we needed to make sure our infrastructure is in place, which is our roads. We have a concern with the legislators on where they are with transportation right now. We have a bigger concern that they want to put it on local government. I think that would be extremely detrimental to local government, just being able to try to keep up with we've got the roads now that it's hard to maintain. So to be able to keep up with not only the county maintained roads, but also the state would be detrimental to local government. So I think it's going to be important that our legislators make that tough decision to put a infrastructure bill in place and fund it appropriately, so we can make sure when companies are saying that we need to do something with our roads, those are the people we're trying to attract to our state and to our county, and we got to make sure we address those issues if we want to move forward the way we say we want to move our state and local government forward.
And sorry to interrupt you, Torrey.
No, please.
So is it past a tipping point for transportation?
I think it is. It is. It's past the tipping point because that's why you see so many local governments passing penny sales tax. York County and Charleston County did it several years before us. Is that we've got to, if it's not going to happen on the state level, we've got to make the tough decisions on the local level to make sure it happens. But we really need our legislators to really fill that void for us.
Tim, how far apart are the different entities in the triangle on transportation issues, and how critical is it?
I see a lot of alignment.
Do you?
Yeah, Orange and Durham counties are moving forward with transit plans. There's a lot.
On similar tracks, or are there competing proposals?
No, on similar tracks, complementary. We have a great regional transit organization that helps to make things work together. And in Wake County, where Raleigh sits, it's really about that last leg of the triangle on transit. And so we have a lot of agreement and a lot of acknowledgement. The electorate, community leaders, the elected officials, everyone agrees we need to get started on transit.
Yeah, okay, that'll be the last question, at least for you all. Transportation is certainly going to be something we continue to talk about here. Coming up on our program the next couple weeks should be interesting. John Fennebrisk is not a shy and retiring type, and he's certainly been at the center of a debate around the UNC Board of Governors, not just because of Tom Ross's retirement this year, but where education and higher education is going in the Old North State. Fennebrisk will be on our program. Chairman Fennebrisk will be on our program. Also, North Carolina's Treasurer Janet Cowell will be joining us, as well as very interesting programs coming up. Dr. Elizabeth Davis, the newly installed president at Furman University, will be here as well. What seemed to be an abrupt exit midsummer of North Carolina DOT boss Tony Tata didn't make the mission of DOT any easier. So, is it more distracting as well as surprising? And how does it bend the arc of North Carolina Department of Transportation almost $3 billion bond proposal? That's a good question. Joining us now is North Carolina Department of Transportation Chairman Ned Curran. Ned, so how not so much why Tony Tata left or not, but does it take some of the momentum out of the bond proposal that you want to get on the fall ballot, or really more importantly, does it bend the arc at all of what you're trying to do with financing around transportation?
Not really. I mean, Tony was a great leader of the department, but change at the top of government occurs all the time, whether it's through the election process, through retirements, through reappointments. We always look at the bench. What's our bench strength?
Yeah.
As board chair, the board took great responsibility in always being able to say to the governor, here's who we would recommend in a number 2 slot should anything ever happen. And so in this case, we had identified Nick Tennyson, who was the chief deputy underneath Tony, as somebody who's former mayor of Durham, somebody who understands transportation systems, was doing the job extraordinarily well, a man of great integrity and trusted by the legislature. And so it was an easy appointment. Within about a week, Nick was appointed permanently into that position. He's off to a great start.
You know, I don't want to overplay this, Torrey, and I'm going to take some of your words here and say this, but Mr. Chairman, it has been a disappointment in South Carolina around transportation. Many businesses and communities expected to have a real transportation plan in place after some promises from the State House. Question, who takes a lead on transportation? Is it DOT that runs out in front of everyone else with the standard? Is it the State House or the General Assembly? I mean, who really needs to compel the dialogue around transportation to get it done?
It starts with the agencies, South Carolina Department of Transportation, North Carolina Department of Transportation. They have the facts. They're able to talk about the funding challenges. Here are the projections. I mean, if we look at the current 10-year plan in the state of North Carolina across the entire state, it takes us 50 years to build that which has been identified as needs today with the funding that we have. Mm-hmm. So those are the facts, but ultimately it comes down to the elected officials. They're the ones that change the laws, that have to have the courage to say what kind of funding reform do we really have to have, and it's incredibly challenging. That's why at the federal level we haven't really seen a long-term transportation plan passed in years. Mm-hmm. That's very problematic because when we talk about major projects, whether it's transit projects, highway projects, they're typically at least a 50% partner in those projects. So if you can't get it solved at the federal level, it's kind of understandable that it's challenging at the federal level.
Torrey?
Yeah, and even to echo that a little bit, legislators, elected officials have to make the tough decisions. My fear with our current legislators, we're coming into an election year. Will they be willing to make that tough decision in the election year? And I've got some concerns with that. But I think if we get back to the essence of why we are serving, which is to make our state and local government a better place for our citizens, we've got to do what's right. And what's right at this point is our infrastructure. And for South Carolina, we're at that point.
Do you have a question for Ned in that?
Well, and I guess my question for Ned is, as it relates to, one of the issues we have is that the legislators are trying to put the road situation back on the local government. What have you seen in other states as it relates, or North Carolina, as it relates to that and the impact that could have on local government?
Local government, particularly in urban areas, have to be at the table.
Yeah.
Simply the funding distribution formulas are such that they've got to supplement. But it's not enough.
Yeah.
I mean, they can only do so much. You're seeing it up in your transit funding, what you're looking at. Charlotte had a half-cent sales tax, and it was able to fund the Blue Line, but there were 5 different transit lines, and you're only able to get 1 done. Yeah. So ultimately, we have to have the courage to identify a whole new funding plan. Yeah. At the federal level, 92 cents on the dollar comes from the gas tax. At North Carolina's level, 60% of the budget is gas tax reliant, similar in South Carolina. And that is just not a stable revenue source. Either it's pegged to pricing and makes it volatile, or it is at best flat. And in the southeastern United States, particularly in the Carolinas, the population migrations that we have coming here, we can't handle a flat revenue source. Yeah, so it's not just the challenge for an elected official to say, I'm going to raise a gas tax. That's a short-term solution. All of us know that's not going to do it. We have to have a whole new funding concept. And there's been plenty of studies. There's no need to study it anymore. I mean, you can only do so much with driver's license renewals, auto registration fees, sales tax on vehicle purchases. We ultimately are going to have to embrace a whole new concept, which is it's like a utility. Your transportation system has to be treated as if it's the power in your house. You want to turn a light switch on, you have to pay for that capacity. Yeah. And so everybody is going to have to fund. You can't simply make it dependent on an automobile or a truck, because that doesn't address all the different users of a transportation system. So it's pretty comprehensive reform that has to occur.
Yeah.
Tim?
Well, in the Triangle, there's a lot of support for the new funding model that North Carolina Department of Transportation has implemented. And curious as to how that's working in other parts of the state.
It really has been a huge success. We've gone through our first 2 years of project identification. We're now into new prioritization. This law changed the way we prioritize projects and really did take the politics out. So other states are looking at it. Yeah. Not to say that the old process of political, you get a road, I get a road, didn't work well, but let's just say that we've added several hundred projects with the same amount of money to advance projects across the state. And now we debate things like how much weighting should congestion have? How much should safety have? What about connectivity? Connectivity embraces the notion of maybe a job center is across the state line. So instead of simply saying we have to look at projects that are within North Carolina, maybe it's better to look at how do we take advantage of Charleston's port, for example, or Norfolk, or if you're the western part of the state, Tennessee and Georgia offer better job opportunities for many of our citizens. So connectivity becomes a key component. So we're debating the intricacies of data sets rather than do you have more political influence than I have?
Right.
And it's made for a much better system.
You know, Ned, you've been known to be a practical and a smart guy about things and understand the process of how things are. What do you think is, you know, in the Charlotte region, in the Triangle, you know, the debates are similar, but they're different because of the attributes of the different communities. But what do you think is being missed in this whole DOT dialogue? What are we not getting as citizens? If you know, and let me start the sentence, and I'll ask you to finish. It would be better if we understood X. What is X?
The challenges we face from a funding standpoint, so that when elected officials face the challenge of re-election and somebody says, you raised a tax, I don't care whether you call it a tax, you call it a fee, whatever, we simply have to have more money for transportation, and we desperately need it. It's urgent.
Past the tipping point?
It is in some of the urban areas. These projects take so long. Yes. You know, we have so many different planning horizons. We have a 2-year horizon, a 5-year, a 7-year, a 10-year, 20, and a 30-year. Those are the different planning horizons we have. 2 years are already done. Those projects are underway. 3 to 5 years are basically done. These are such intense capital projects that's already spoken for. You start to get to 5 to 10 or way out there, and you're starting to debate, well, how are people even going to be using our transportation systems in 20 and 30 years? What values telecommuting, drone deliveries? These are very real things we have to think about, but it's very hard to incorporate that. So when you bring it back near term, you simply sit there and say, look, it would take us 50 years to build what we all say we need in the next 10 years. Well, that's crisis mode. If you're talking about Wake County, you're talking about the urban areas of South Carolina. And so we're trying to look for other tools like public-private partnerships, like tolling. We recognize that they're not popular, but without those tools, we're concerned about flat-out immobility within the transportation system.
If I can add to that, even with that, not only when we're talking about growth and how do we keep up with growth, but even maintenance is a huge issue as well.
Yeah, as we expand these systems, we're also expanding the burdens that are associated with them from a maintenance standpoint.
And I would add that from the triangle and talking about Raleigh, that's going through a lot of growth. There's a lot of commonality around the idea that we don't want to wake up in 5 or 10 years and realize that we missed the boat like they did in Atlanta or like they did in Austin, Texas. We don't want to be in that situation, and it's creating the urgency today to take steps and make those investments now, so we don't become what we don't want to see.
You know, we've always benefited in being able to look at other larger metropolitan areas around the country to take what lessons are there. So when we look at tools that we can employ, so when we talk about tolling could be just simply a revenue source, or it can also be a way to manage traffic. So we're employing managed lane concepts now, where you have variable pricing so that you know, well, the interstate may be in trouble, but that lane is moving. It may cost me something, but if I have an airport deadline I've got to get to or a daycare appointment, I may need to pay the freight, but at least I reliably know one lane is moving. That's the concept of managed lanes.
Well, we got a couple minutes left, and I want to get this in. I know your day job is not running the North Carolina Department of Transportation or chairing the board, but at Bissell Companies. And Bissell Companies recently just announced, in fact, 287,000 square feet of spec space, which would mean to me that you are optimistic about the near and even the midterm. Am I putting words in your mouth?
You are putting words in my mouth, but they're all the right words, and they relate to the transportation subject. I mean, the fact that people are coming here means that we have demand. So the Carolinas are still a very desirable place for people to come to. Great quality of life, great workforce, great work ethic, and so companies continue to want to come here. We feel that. We've always felt that. You know, Smokey's always been a gambler, and he's been willing to take the risk on 100% speculative office buildings. So we've done over 40 buildings in Ballantyne, and only 3 were made to order, and the rest of them all were literally 100% spec. So this one is.
Any sleepless nights on that kind of?
He sleeps very well.
And now Smokey is the chairman of Bissell Companies. You're the chief executive. Question for Ned. It's certainly around commercial real estate. That's also in your.
That's definitely my background, and I will say, and that's pretty impressive to build that type of spec space. That tells you where the growth is, and the interest that people have in the Midlands. So is it primarily office space or do you guys also get into industrial space or any other?
We simply do office and associated hotel product. Okay. And it's primarily concentrated in Ballantyne, which is the southern portion of Charlotte, but Class A product, and it's product that's near an interstate, so it offers all those advantages. But we also see new product evolving in the Raleigh area. We see it in South Carolina as well, and Center City, Charlotte. So speculative development is coming back. It's candidly not coming back relative to the demand that's out there.
Really?
No. So price points are higher, which is good from a landlord's perspective. The cost to develop is higher, but it's a very robust marketplace today. There's a good undercurrent, good feel, I think, for all the Carolinas as it relates to office property.
And Tim, we only got a minute left, so let me just, I'm sorry to have to cut you off, but we're going to run out of time. So quickly, Ned, when you look at things like the 10-year Treasury and watch that yield, how critical is our interest rates in where you all expect to see continue to build or expect you to backfill?
You know, it's critical in terms of how it reflects perceptions of the underlying economy. 100% speculative office building is tough to finance, so we just don't ask banks to finance it. We just pay it out of existing resources and stabilize it, and then finance it at that point. But you know, the economy, its growth is okay, and in the Carolinas, it's good.
Yeah. Okay, that'll be the last word. Ned, thanks for your leadership on DOT in the Charlotte Chamber and certainly at Bissell Companies, and the fact that you have energy and you're still have good color in your face. We're all pretty excited about that, so thank you. Good to see you again. Tim, welcome. Good to have you here in the Carolinas.
Thank you.
And Torrey, good luck with that Richland County
Thank you,
Commission.
Chris.
God bless you there, brother.
Well, we're excited.
It'll be interesting. Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for being here. Thank you for watching our program. Until next week, I'm Chris Wood, and we hope your weekend is good. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care, when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.